to sit down and watch the film. And mate, this is an absolutely stunning film. So I guess the best place to start for our listeners is tell us a little bit about how this film came together, because it has a very, very interesting story behind it.
Yeah. So originally, it was just we made a short film, which is Tom Swinburne and I, which he actually wrote the short film when he was living in the States, when he was sort of looking for a place to rent, and he was living in Texas, and he was going on Craigslist a lot to try to find places to live and furniture and all that sort of stuff, and he sort of would come across these strange adverts that people would post, looking for connections and, just sort of these strange little encounters. And so I think that's how he kind of got the idea for the original concept. And along with that, he had heard about a concept called drama therapy, where people who have been through traumatic events can sort of relive that experience with actors and sort of change the outcome, which is probably a very simplified version of it. But so those two ideas kind of melded together, I think, and that's where the idea came from. So he wrote the short film, and when he came back to Australia, we made it. And a bit of backstory, we both went to film school together, so that's how we know each other. And so, yeah, when I read the short, I was like, oh, this is great. It was kind of the first 10 minutes of the feature. So we did the short, and we did that for absolutely no money, $2,000. But it seemed like a really kind of, I wouldn't say easy, but it was all set in the one location. And what was strong about it was, not the camera moves, not the production design, but purely the script and the dialogue and the characters. So I was pretty gangbusters on trying to make my first feature. Like I was pretty much all I thought about. So that idea seemed to me like a great idea to make a really low budget feature. So we started working on the script and expanding it into what it became. So yeah, we spent the next year writing it, and then we soon realised that, as it is in Australia, if you're starting out, it's really hard to get money to make anything. So we started thinking about how we could do it ultra low budget, and the idea to do it in Australia seemed to get a little bit further and further away as we were writing it, because the dialogue and the place it was set just, I wanted it to feel really foreign and weird and kind of unidentifiable, and you didn't really know where you were in the world. So we started thinking about other countries where it would fit, and Ukraine just seemed to be this perfect place, because it was sort of set, but still sort of, stuck in a lot of ways in a sort of old world, and the architecture and the cars and the people, everything there is quite old, and it hasn't really caught up to the rest of sort of Europe in a lot of ways, and so it just felt like the perfect place to set this story. So we had a few bucks in our pocket, and booked a flight and hoped for the best, and yeah, we pulled it off.
What was the biggest shock to the system when you got to the Ukraine? Because you mentioned that it's very different to the rest of Europe. What was the biggest kind of shock that you got when you first got there?
Well, just how slow how long everything takes just to navigate. Not really, no one spoke English who were, over 25, for instance. So that made things look really difficult. Just navigating. So trying to find places. Google Maps really didn't work very well. If you wanted to go, print out a document, that took like half a day, because you had to find the place, and everything's in Russian, and it just felt like it was just a slower march there. But that was more of a practical thing. Just going there, it just felt like I was stepping back in time. Like the cars, the cars they drive are from the 60s and 70s, and obviously there's some rich areas because everywhere's got their own pockets of wealth, but it's just a really cool place, and I don't know. It's if no one's ever been there, it's definitely worth going to. It's a real trip.
Yeah. So how do you go about casting a film when you're in a country where you don't speak the language and not very many people speak English? How do you go about casting a film then and finding the actors that you need?
Yeah. So the biggest thing was as soon as we got there. Well, actually, before we got there, I started hunting for a producer that could help us on the ground. Boots on the ground producers. So through a lot of trial and error, we came across Ollie, who had lived in London. She was Ukrainian. She lived in London, and she worked as a production manager there for a few years, doing sports stuff. So she spoke really good English. She knew kind of, the way things go. So she thankfully came on board. And so she sort of became our. So Ollie became sort of our, fixer / guardian angel, and so she became, she was the one who sort of, she was the broker between, for everything, translator, producer. So as soon as we got there, we met up with Ollie, and she was 100% in, and thankfully for us, but not thankfully for her, she just lost her job, so she was completely free to do this shoot. So yeah, we started casting, and so pretty much what would happen is I'd go on this website. It's kind of like what we have here, Star Now, but in Ukraine. And
yep.
I'd just find faces and send them to her, and she'd do all the talking and get them in for an audition. But yeah, so because really none of these people spoke English, so yeah, we really needed someone like Ollie, or else it's just impossible for Tom and I to pull this off without her.
Yeah, and did the story kind of develop more, like the plot for the film develop more because of the environment of where you were in the Ukraine? Did you change things from the script that you had because of the environment there?
Yeah, little bits did, definitely. I was really happy with the script before we left, and I was really confident in it. So I didn't want to change things too much when I got there, just because I'm the type of person where if there's a change, I really need to sleep on it for a few days and think and make sure it's the right choice. So I didn't change. Big things didn't change, but little details changed. We'd meet people, or we'd hear things and conversations, or we'd see things, and we'd add that in that we found humorous or interesting. So those things definitely, the culture of the place seeped its way in. But also at the same time, I didn't want this film to be a Ukrainian film. As I mentioned before, I wanted it to be kind of unidentifiable in a lot of ways and foreign, and kind of have a blanket kind of abstract quality to it. So the Ukrainian lifestyle wasn't an influence, just more the absurdity of certain things that we'd see day to day.
Yeah,
made its way in.
And the other big change here for you as well is this is your first feature. Tell us a little bit, for all the filmmakers out there, what was the biggest difference you noticed going into a feature from what you'd previously done with shorts?
Yeah, it was. A lot of it was the same, but the biggest thing was just obviously, like, the time it took to do it. It felt like I was running a marathon, and you just, when is this thing going to end? Kind of, that was the biggest thing. It really had to be. Every day you had to really psych yourself up to get through the day in a lot of ways, because it just, if you think about, it's day 2 of week 2 and I've got 5 weeks to go, you have a breakdown.
Yeah.
It's just so tough. So I try to just not think about, as best I could not think about the next day or the following week, just focusing on today, this scene, this minute, this hour, sort of thing,
Yeah.
Otherwise, and I did have a bit of a, midway through, oh God, I don't think I can do this, It was just getting it was the weight of it felt too immense. But once you start, you can't stop. Like I couldn't start this thing and then come home with it half done. I had to push through.
Definitely.
So, yeah, that was the biggest challenge, I think, was just how long it takes to do it and how much you need to invest yourself in it.
Yeah, well, the result is something absolutely brilliant, and it opens for all of our listeners out there. It opens on the 17th of June at Dendy Newton, Dendy Canberra, Lido Cinemas in Melbourne, Dendy Coparoo in Brisbane, the State Cinema in Hobart, and the Pivotorian in Geelong. So make sure you go and check out A Family at one of those dates and times when the film is showing. And I guess to finish off, Jayden, what would you like to say to our listeners out there before they go and check out this amazing film?
I guess go and see it with an open mind. It's probably something you might not have seen before. So yeah. I just enjoy the ride. Really, it's a weird one, but I think it's fun.
Definitely, and for all our listeners out there, if you missed when I was talking about where the film is opening on the 17th, just check out our website or where you got this podcast from, and all of those cinemas will be mentioned there. Well, Jayden, thank you so much for taking the time to chat to us today. It's been an absolute pleasure, and we can't wait to see what you do with your next project.
Thank you. Cheers.
Not a problem, mate. I'll let you go. Have a great day, and hopefully we get to talk again with your next film.
Yeah, great. Cheers, mate.
Awesome. Thanks, mate. Bye.